The war in Ukraine is not just a regional conflict, it's a seismic event reshaping the global landscape, impacting everything from energy prices and supply chains to the future of democracy. Delta Analytics explores the far-reaching consequences of the war, examining its effects on geopolitics, economics, and our interconnected world. Join us as we delve into the conflict's ripple effects and analyze how it's shaping our world. This week, we're shining a spotlight on Blue Yellow USA, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to providing non-lethal aid to the defenders of Ukraine. They're working tirelessly to deliver essential supplies like medical kits, protective gear, and vital technology directly to the front lines. Every contribution, big or small, makes a real difference in helping those bravely defending Ukraine. Please consider donating to Blue Yellow USA if you can. Your support will help ensure that Ukraine has the resources needed to continue the fight for freedom and democracy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another session of Delta Analytics. Again, was joining Colonel Kostas Eidukonis. Welcome.
Thank you, Igor.
So today we actually have quite a few geopolitical developments to discuss. Fall of Sadat, how that government change in Syria, regime change in Syria will affect geopolitical situation, specifically Ukraine, but in general, the entire region. What is your read on it?
Fascinating. I think like I said, we're living in very interesting times. The fall of Syria in 10 days, I think, was totally unexpected by a lot of people. And
yeah, I heard that the projections of intelligence community the day before was March, but it was just a few days.
Yeah, it went a lot faster than a lot of people expected. And
right.
Those things have a life of their own. Once they start going, it's like a snowball rolling downhill. One place falls after another place, and pretty soon everybody just gives up. And the interesting thing is, like, the comparison made between Zelensky and Bashar. The difference, one said, I need ammunition, not a ride out of here. The other one took the ride out of here. And
yeah,
interestingly enough, I think the Russians also helped by to get him out of there by spreading the rumor that his plane had crashed with him on board. So nobody was looking for him. And that helped him get out of Baghdad real quickly with another flight, which was probably a Russian flight.
Probably. Interesting that in our intelligence professionals were wrong again when they were predicting a quick fall of Ukraine, and they were wrong there, and they predicted slow fall of Assad, and they were wrong here as well.
Yeah, I think they're going to be wrong on the slow fall of Russia too. I think that's going to start unraveling a lot faster than they expect to.
That's very interesting thought, but let's get to it first by looking at well, there is definitely a rebalancing of forces in the Middle East, in the area where Syria or Assad's sphere of influence was, with the destruction, basically dismantlement of Hamas. He lost valuable support from Iran. Iran lost a foothold in the area. Turkey is obvious winner because they have now sphere of influence over Syria, and they can quickly solve their problems with Kurds on their southern border that unties their hands. Israel, obvious winner because they solved their issues in both Lebanon and Golan Heights. The obvious losers, Iran and Russia, but Ukraine also gonna be not in very good spot because they're gonna deal with the Russian forces that will be redeployed from Syria to Ukraine. And those guys were using ruthless tactics against Syrians. And there is no reason not to suspect not to continue the same thing in Ukraine. What are your thoughts?
Okay, one of the things I think a lot of people don't know that Syria became a dumping ground for failed Russian officers.
Hmm.
They were when they failed in Ukraine, they were sent over to Syria to
Really?
to do something,
Hmm.
and this obviously uh, favored the Syrian rebels because once these incompetent officers took over, the usual stuff, the corruption, the thievery,
Of course.
the lining your pockets, and everything else took place, and also the fact that the Russian military in Syria had been already pretty well cannibalized.
Hmm.
Now they had a lot of stuff there. I'm trying to follow the news on what's going on with the three bases that the Russians had, Latakia, Toros, in the seaport, and there's another air base I forget the name of.
Hmm.
But those three bases can't you haven't been able to find out the status of it, and there's supposedly a lot of Russians that have been cut off.
Hmm.
The word is that there has been a deal made between Russia and the rebels on the status of these and giving them safe passage out of the country.
Hmm.
So they can't move all the other stuff that they have. Their ships are already at sea. They don't have the transports to get everything out of there, and a lot of the stuff was captured. I don't think they're going to give it back to the Russians to
Hmm.
move to Ukraine, but a lot of the stuff was captured,
Hmm.
including radars and air defense systems and jet planes and tanks and everything else. So I don't think a lot of that stuff is going to end up in Ukraine. Question is, they have to get it out. If they do, even by sea, going through the Mediterranean, they can't enter through the Bosphorus Straits because of Turkey's
Right.
Monroe Convention invocation.
Hmm.
So they'd have to ship them all the way back around the Baltic Sea to St. Petersburg or whatever, and it is going to take a long time to get that equipment back. I don't
That's
think they can
providing
fly
that
it.
they still have access to their naval base, or
Yes,
rebels will give them a safe passage.
right. So that's still up in the air. I don't know what's going on there. Supposedly they have a deal,
Hmm.
but I haven't heard anything further as of this morning. So maybe we'll find out something this evening later on. Where's going to get in? But yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and do you want to touch on the developments in Georgia?
yeah. I got a friend of mine who's a reporter for TV3,
Hmm.
Lithuanian TV3, and she's over there right now. Got to hand it to this girl. She's very brave. She did a report on the border here in the United States. Went all the way up to Nogales and Sasabe and talked to people on the border and everything else. But she's in Georgia right now, filming the protests and the riots there. And yesterday, the thugs came in.
Hmm.
These are people dressed not in police uniforms, but in black,
Hmm.
and they started going around beating up protesters and beating up reporters, especially reporters,
Hmm.
because the reporters are still reporting for Georgian TV. And interestingly enough, now the people there have formed uh, hunting committees to hunt these thuggies,
Hmm.
as they call them, and we'll see what happens. What I'm afraid of is, that in Georgia, hopefully the scenario goes the way Maidan went. The Ukrainian revolution doesn't end up going the way the Belarusian and the Venezuelan revolution went. The Venezuelans are still without the government they elected, and so are the Belarusians. And basically, the lesson to learn from that is if you beat up the protesters badly enough, loudly enough, arrest enough of them, sooner or later they're going to give up. And I don't think the Georgians are going to do that, but you never know. Just afraid of that scenario happening.
It's interesting that you mentioned Maidan, because the same scenario played out in Maidan, or very similar, where there was a Berkut, Russian paramilitary police, or Ukrainian paramilitary police was first deployed against the protesters, and then they did send in plainclothes thugs to deal with the protesters, but protesters dealt with them, and we know how that ended. Now, with the defeat that Russians suffered in Syria, with their forces being tied up in Ukraine, after the another fiasco in Armenia, where their support to Armenia was quickly dismantled. It's possible that Russia just cannot stretch itself far enough to help the pro-Moscow regime in uh, in Georgia. So we could see another situation what happened in Kiev.
I hope we do. I hope we
Yeah, I
do.
hope
I
so.
think that's very, very possible and very plausible. They're I don't know if it's true or not, but my information was that a lot of the repression in Ukraine was not done by Ukrainians, but it was done by some Russians that were flown in special to do that.
Yeah, I heard
And
these.
I don't know how true those rumors are, but
Right,
I think some of that is happening right now in Georgia. I think it might be there's a special
right,
Russian unit that
totally.
basically specializes in those kind of things, as well as blowing up, airliners and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
and what's interesting is that some months ago, you and I spoke about the what we thought was Russian Chinese strategy to stretch American forces across multiple conflicts, and that's why they started conflict in Israel, and how tables turn. Now Russians and Chinese are being stretched across multiple conflicts. And they're not dealing very well with that situation.
yeah, interesting. There was a little article today that the Russians plan to impose some tariffs on some Chinese furniture parts that are coming into Russia. So,
Furniture or furniture?
furniture parts that the Russians need to manufacture, furniture,
That's
because
interesting.
they really don't manufacture any of their own. They need these certain parts from Russia, but the Russians want to put on a tariff on Chinese parts,
That's
because
interesting.
that was fascinating. So you don't do that to your ally who's strong. You do that to somebody who you want to bring down a notch. And I think the Chinese might have just done that. Plus the
I did hear that the one of the speculations or long-term projections that the West will try to turn Russia as a card against China. So sitting the wedge or sitting the seeds of discourse between those two nations could be part of the politics that is not transparent to us.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because also the Chinese have turned the table a little bit on Russian land claims. I mean, if the Russians can claim parts of Ukraine as being part of their historic territory, there are parts of Russia that were originally part of Chinese territory, and on their maps that they put out, no matter how much Putin protests, these places are shown as being part of China. I think this is the start of the demise of Russia as a imperial empire, because it's not looking good. The economy is in trouble. These last events, the events in Georgia, the events in Syria, the events in Romania are basically not in Putin's favor. And the question is, how long will the oligarchs put up with it before they decide that he needs to take flying lessons
Right.
without a parachute?
Yeah, true. And the other thing that we need to probably take a closer look in the future broadcasts is the decrease of the male population in Russia and with the pending genetic disaster, what they're gonna do for people, for workforce that would support their economy.
Yeah,
Uh,
all kinds of desperate acts being taken by the Russian government, and nothing works. They want
right.
to outlaw any talk about single families without kids or stuff like that. It's desperation is written all over. These acts are the acts of a desperate person, desperate country. The demographics are really bad for Russia. They're bad for Ukraine. They're bad for a lot of other parts of the world too, for China too. But
Of course.
when you lose 700 something thousand men on the battlefield and about 3 million leave the country, it totally, their biggest complaint right now is they can't find workers. Well, God, they're either working in the defense industry or they're fighting in Ukraine or they were in Syria.
Right.
Not good places to be.
That's all the time we have for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us as we explored thought-provoking topics. We hope you found it insightful and informative. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to catch future episodes where we delve into more exciting topics. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time.